tonight is that this House would grant amnesty and a path to citizenship for all immigrants in the United States.
And as the national conversation envelops that whole scene, and as we discuss what needs to happen to these people and what their futures entail, we need to focus on a basic principle that exists in our country, that anyone, no matter where they came from, and no matter what they came for, and no matter anything like that, if they're willing to take on work and they're willing to take on the responsibilities of citizenship, they should be able to become an American citizen. And it is in that light we should be examining the case for amnesty and examining what we need to do to reform our immigration system to provide a better environment for immigrants to come into the United States. First of all, let's look at amnesty. What does amnesty actually look like? Amnesty is forgiving their acts of illegal immigration and implicitly forgiving other related legal acts if you drive without a license or if you come in here with false documents. That's what amnesty is. And the current plan we're proposing is, again, to offer them amnesty, and then we're going to offer them a path to citizenship in which they can get their green card, which is the path to get citizenship in the United States. Let's talk about why we're going to do this. The first point is this, is that it's good for the undocumented immigrants. They're exploited under the current system where they have a legal status. They can't go to the police if their crimes happen to them. They can't go to anybody if crimes happen to them. They can't get a lawyer because they're afraid during the litigation bad things will happen to them. And they're exploited by a lot of employers. And they can't go to anybody because of that. For example, 7-Eleven franchisees in New York City were busted because they found that they had over 100 illegal immigrants working inside of them who worked 100 hours a week for $2.53 an hour. That is slave labor, essentially, according to the laws we have in the United States of America. That's not okay for us to be doing to illegal immigrants. That's not okay for anybody to be doing to illegal immigrants. And that's one of the things we can do if we offer amnesty and have them come out of the shadows and thank you. We can allow them to stop being exploited. We can allow them to be able to have a livable wage and stop the exploitation in that specific arena. In fact, a whopping 51% of agribusinesses, are employ unauthorized immigrants. And during the last decade, they actually recorded an 80% annual increase, which is not okay. If you're making that much money, you should be able to be paying the workers more, especially when they're being exploited in such an egregious manner. So, they can't get better pay because they're not legal. There's bad things that are happening to them. We need to fix that. And actually, why are we surprised in the first place? No thank you, illegal immigration. The estimated wait time for people from a lot of countries is extremely long. For example, China and India, it's a 6-year wait. A lot of other countries, it's a 6.5-year wait. For Mexico and some of those countries down south, it's 17 to 19 years they have to wait before they can even apply to get a green card. Why are we surprised at this when the current system is so bad? Now, let's talk about why this is good for the U.S. economy. The roughly 11 million immigrants working and living in the United States are earning far less than the potential. They pay a lot less in taxes and contribute significantly less to the U.S. economy than they would if they were given the opportunity to gain legal status and earn U.S. citizenship. In fact, government reports say that if they come out of the shadows and work legally, we will have a lot of money added to the system. We can reduce the deficit in the United States by $850 billion over the next 20 years. And the path to citizenship would allow currently undocumented workers to pay above board, and they would pay a lot of taxes per year, and they would be able to contribute significantly to the American system. This is great for America, not only great news for undocumented immigrants, but great news for America, and as such, we should be able to propose that. Why is this? It's because citizenship itself is associated with an additional boost in wages of 5% or more in all quartiles when immigrants are allowed to become citizens in the United States. When you become a citizen, you automatically make 5% more money than you would if you were not a citizen. And as such, these are the things that happen, according to the government, when you allow undocumented immigrants to become citizens. You have $568 billion higher GDP by 2022, a lot more money in America. You have $321 billion in additional income for all Americans by 2022, again, and $75 billion more taxes paid by undocumented immigrants, and 820,000 more jobs for U.S. workers. This is a great policy for America. It's adding jobs, it's adding money. This is great. Now, why should we do the amnesty, and why, again, do we need to reform our immigration system? As it was said, it was broken. Since the mid-1960s, our immigration laws have been intended to protect us in 4 major areas. In no particular order, they are these. They are public safety, public health, employment, and national security. Public safety. If you are a criminal, you can't come in America. Public health. It used to be that if you had a disease you couldn't get in America. Employment, we can already see through our plan and through all sorts of other things like that, that we would have great measures of employment if we allowed people to come to the United States, and national security, suspect classifications, which is how they allow people in through national security, like for terrorism and stuff. In the nebulous field, there's no reason to exclude anybody for that because of the fact that they might propose a threat to national security.
But with blanket amnesty, what you don't do is you say like that it's okay to do illegal things, and we're just gonna pardon you, and in the future you're promoting illegal immigrants to come in hopes of amnesty, in hopes in the future. You're actually creating a bigger problem here.
Okay, and this is the reason this is actually not a problem, is that America is a nation of immigrants, and this is the crux of immigration reform. We need to open our gates. When we open our gates, we eliminate the need for illegal immigration. You want to solve illegal immigration? Fine. And stop keeping immigrants out of the United States. How do we fix our broken immigration system in America? What do you think? No, thank you. Cut red tape for employees. Also, staple, go for it.
So are you saying that this amnesty is for forever for anyone who wants to come in and it's open borders now?
No, it's a one-time amnesty that we're offering, and then we're going to open up the immigration system to allow those who want to come to the United States to be able to come to the United States. Also, we're going to staple green cards to advance student employment. We're going to allow students to come to the United States. We're going to get agribusiness moving. We'll allow people who want to come in for agricultural purposes to be able to do this. We can solve the immigration problem in America. This proposal seeks to eliminate existing backlogs so people can come in. We can fix the system. We can allow people to come in when they want to come in, because the very reason the system we had to keep people out is not working first of all. And there's a lot of reasons that people are saying, and it is true, that we should not be keeping them out for sketchy reasons that, oh listen, they might propose a threat to national security. No. We should allow the vast amount of people who want to come to the United States to come to the United States, because the absolute benefits this provides for the United States of America, and will do so for decades and decades to come. For this reasons, I find it fitting to call the people who we will offer amnesty American. Let's give these Americans a shot at the American dream. For these reasons, I'm proud to propose.
Ladies and gentlemen, they call themselves the team for the American dream. But we're going to prove to you, side opposition is truly the team of American dream. That's why we so proudly pronounce ourselves as the team of dream. Why is that? It's because we're going to propose to you a very powerful alternative that can solve all the problems in their case, and while we preserve our integrity of the law. The law cannot be broken. The ones who break the law, you should be punished. What is our alternative? In 2008, President Obama issued an act which is called the DREAM Act, which entitles the children of immigrants a window of 2 years stay in the US without the fear of deportation. And they have the chance to find opportunities of education or seek for jobs that will entitle them the right for citizenship in the future. So we see this as a very good alternatives, and we're going to expand this, this kind of DREAM Act to all of the illegal citizens right now in the US. And so that after, in the 2 years, we're going to encourage them, we're going to have our faith in them, for them to seek education, for them to try to be trained to attend American legal citizenship in the future. So, and by doing this, we can solve the problems proposed by their side, that they are being exploited, that it's very hard for them to get a green card, or it can increase the money revenue or public safety. But before going to my constructive, I'm going to examine what they have said and prove to you why these points do not stand at all right. First point they gave us is that it is these people are likely to be exploited. But we challenge you to answer the question: why is it okay for why is it not okay for employers to abuse these citizens because it's illegal? And why it is okay for these immigrants to break the law in the first place and enter America? If your line of principle here, if law cannot be broken, then we would uphold our model, uphold our alternative, and say that we do not condone these people in breaking the law in the first place. But at the same time, we are offering a venue for you to prove that you can live up to the expectations of this society, and to prove that you can actually enter this country through legal means, right? And also they talked about public safety, right? But we say that way in your case is the way that truly damages our public safety in this country. Because essentially what you're doing is offering a blanket amnesty for everybody who potentially poses danger to our country. You're giving them the immediate entry to our country without doing any background screening on them, without doing any due diligence on them. We say many people who obtain this kind of linkage with some very dangerous organizations like the Mexican cartels, like the Middle East terrorist organizations, they will receive this very automatic entry in this country, and that's what is going to pose a danger to the safety of this nation. Go.
Here's the deal. We offer a blanket amnesty, but then we also offer a path to citizenship, which does include background checks. We still get insolvency on our side.
First of all, we say it is a very, if you're going to offer this kind of background check, so what is essentially different from the way that you ask them to go through the legal way to attain the American citizenship? It's not that essentially different. Actually, it's very similar to the status quo here, right? So no big change in that case. What we're going to prove to you, first of all, is that lawbreakers cannot be rewarded and consequences can happen because of that. Then we're going to prove to you that the injustice to the law-abiding citizens in this country is going to prolong or worsen the discrimination against the minorities in this country. And third of all, we're going to prove to you the essential difference between our alternative and yours, why ours is so much better. First of all, we say that when you essentially reward lawbreakers, when you're saying that if you have done some illegal act and you can finally got off the hook, it's because you're making this problem so severe that this country cannot handle this. This is sending out a very bad signal, and this can be poisonous to the system of the country. What kind of consequences might appear? First consequence, you're going to encourage more people to do it right. We saw this kind of amnesty during Reagan's reign, during the country. That already failed. Why is that? It's because when you're seeing that these people, when they cause a big enough problem for this country cannot begin to solve, that the country is going to pardon them, is going to forgive them automatically. Their mentality is going to be like this, right? We're going to keep entering this country and keep this country keep the problem in this country. So one day, this country will automatically approve of this act. So we're going to keep worsening this problem. So you're not stopping the problem, but actually promoting the problem. Secondly, this is going to blur our morality. Before, when there's the absence of amnesty, people know clearly what the law allows people to do and what the law disallows people to do, right? So that people have very clear morality calibration, what is correct and what is wrong. When you send out a message that when you make the situation bad enough, that the moralities can be recalibrated, moralities can be blurred. This sends out a very bad message that can transform our society in a bad way. Thirdly, about security, I've proved to you in my rebuttal that when you have a blanket amnesty, you're not going to screen the people that are going to harm our society. Whereas in our alternative, we still keep the screening process, we still keep our country's safety to some extent. Second of all, we're going to prove to you why injustice to the law-abiding citizens will lead to more discrimination. First of all, we say the state's recognition of you as a legal citizen and eligible citizen doesn't mean people's recognition of you as a legal and a good citizen. We say that right now, when they are not given this amnesty, at least people have this level of sympathy for them. People feel that they are not living well, they are working very bad jobs. People still have the sympathy to at least care for them and reach out a hand for them. But when you actively give this amnesty and state condolence to these people, the law-abiding citizens, they will feel hijacked by these breaking people. That the law-abiding citizens will feel like victimized. That they feel like this country has been hijacked because these people created a problem big enough for this country not being able to handle. So that this will feed into more fear and more discrimination against these people. And we would possibly see acts against these populations because the law-abiding citizens might feel self-righteous that when the state is not protecting, when the state is not doing the right thing, people feel like they have the self-need to do this thing themselves. So we will see more cases like Trayvon Martin. We will see more cases of abuses of minority rights. With that said, we think Our team is seriously considering the status quo and try to solve the problem, whereas their side is not. With that said, we're proud to oppose the solution.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem when the opposition side gets up here and decries everything about amnesty to be terrible, to be denigrating our very system of legality, to be tearing at the roots of our morality, and yet what they propose is essentially amnesty without the best benefits of that type of policy. Let's talk about why that is. A few points of refutation, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit of what Isaac talked about in his speech, and then I'm going to talk about in my speech why we think the problems of racism, discrimination, and the social stigma against immigrants is something we have to deal with right now, and why amnesty does that the best. Okay, so let's talk about the DREAM Act, or this revamped version of the DREAM Act, so people are protected for 2 years from deportation, so long as they pursue some sort of legal path of citizenship. 3 responses to this, I think. Okay, first, there's very little difference between this policy and a policy of amnesty. It essentially keeps you protected from deportation, that's what amnesty does, and it allows you to go on a path to citizenship. So we challenge the opposition that they provided any sort of meaningful critique or meaningful alternative to what we've given you in this debate. We think it's very similar, it's just a lot worse. Why? The second reason, because you still get millions of people who get deported. If they have a problem with that, and they should, because they don't seem to talk about the problem of millions of people getting deported. First off, it's really difficult to do and we haven't been able to do it. But secondly, it's just pretty much immoral and it's not something we should be doing. But why we think this is going to happen is because in 1986, when we granted amnesty under the Reagan administration, a lot of people, some people didn't find out that that was the policy, right? When you have a complicated policy that tells people they have to apply to a government office, they have to go along this path to citizenship, I think one, people will be afraid of this type of policy because they think it might be some way for immigration to be rooting them out and trying to get them out into the open to then catch them. But also we think they may just not understand the policy, and after 2 years go by, they didn't apply for the right things, they didn't fill out the right paperwork, and now they're in the same situation they were before, and this great DREAM Act did nothing for them or their families. But third, their critique of our policy, one of the critiques is that it sets up an expectation of amnesty in the future. The DREAM Act, or as they present it, does the same thing. If you grant people the possibility of amnesty and then citizenship under their model, it does the same thing. You can still have the future expectations of the government granting the DREAM Act. Again, we don't think there's any meaningful difference there. What else does he tell you in the last speech? So first he gets up here and tells you that the law cannot be broken, we need to uphold the law. Look, if we're somehow failing to uphold the law with amnesty, they're failing to uphold the law with the DREAM Act. Because what they're doing is saying that we are going to forgive you, certain people who got here illegally, we are going to forgive you if that undermines the legal system as they claim. It does so on their side of the house as well. He also talks about the exploitation point, which was brought to you very well by Isaac. He says, why is it not okay for employers to abuse these workers? Okay, first off, because it's immoral, right? Like, we shouldn't treat human beings as slaves simply because they didn't come here through the legal means. But secondly, why do people come here in the first place? Why do they go around legal immigration? Because oftentimes they're fleeing dangerous situations, but there are already too many people who have gotten refugee status, or they don't qualify for refugee status, or they can't fit into the quota that's already been filled, that gets filled within about a month of the year. And they're fleeing those situations, and our legal immigration system is obsolete, outdated, and doesn't allow for enough people to come into the country. That's why people come here. You shouldn't punish them for your own system being broken. You should fix that system. Part of fixing the system is allowing these people to be forgiven of something that really isn't a crime in the first place. He also talks about safety and criminality. Okay, 2 responses. First, those who are criminals for anything else besides being an illegal immigrant can be pursued by the law. When you become a citizen of the United States, you don't get magically protected from being like a robber or a murderer or some sort of other criminal. No, we can still pursue you and prosecute you. But secondly, as Abby points out in a question, the path to citizenship always requires background checks. Always requires background checks. That is absolutely part of this policy. We simply forgive them of deportation. We forgive them of illegal immigration. We're not going to deport them while we're going through this process. And lastly, he tells us that there's going to be racism and discrimination. I'll talk about this more on my positive matter. But first, we would challenge that this is the case, right? We would challenge the idea that racism and discrimination, if it does exist, and we think it does, is going to get significantly worse simply because we grant amnesty. But secondly, if it is going to happen, if racism is suddenly going to get incredibly worse, We would rather have that happen under a system of laws between one citizen and another citizen than between one citizen and someone who is not legally protected by any definition of the word. That type of person gets no recourse for the discrimination or the racism against them, and the government implicitly supports that racism when they grant no legal status to those people. Okay, let's talk about racism and discrimination for a little bit. As adding on to one of Isaac's points real quick, when you talk about workers being exploited, and this is really important, people get jobs when they are illegal immigrants by getting fake social security cards. That means that when they're working, every paycheck that they earn, part of that goes to Social Security and part of that goes to Medicare. People are literally paying into a system that they cannot access the benefits of because they are not citizens, and they provide not a lot of chance for that to happen either. So that's a problem. But let's talk about the social stigma against immigrants. As the amount of immigration to the United States has increased, we have seen an unfortunate rise in the amount of racism and discrimination as well. When the government fails to afford these immigrants any sorts of legal protection, they are effectively subhuman, sub-persons in the eyes of the law. That's not okay. Go for it.
But when you blend those two groups, that stereotype is now applied to the entire group that gets the amnesty and the group that came here legally.
No,
You make it worse.
see, this is the problem. It's already happening that way as Marlene describes it right now. Because you can't tell who's an illegal immigrant and who's a legal immigrant. Which is why people in Arizona and Texas craft laws that discriminate and profile against people who are brown, against people who look like they might have come from Mexico, because they want to discriminate against all of those people. And all we have to do to deal with this issue is to do the same thing we did in 1986, wave the magic wand and say, we're not going to deport you, we want you to be part of our country for all of the beneficial reasons Isaac talked about. This discrimination does already spread to the people who look like they might be illegal immigrants. The way you deal with racism and discrimination is really important because historically it only happens one way, ladies and gentlemen, and it happens through integration. It happens through bringing people out of the shadows that they're currently living in, letting them join communities as productive members of society, and letting, over time, the people who currently don't accept them or embrace them to learn that they are just as valuable, just as American, just as meaningful people as they are. That's how you solve the problems of racism and discrimination. They don't do it because they do a half policy of amnesty. We don't agree with it. We will not accept anything but the full thing. We are proud to propose.
As an international student and a potential immigrant to the United States in the future, I have every reason to defend every decent right for every immigrant inhabiting in the territory of the United States. However, side opposition today do believe that there is a line to keep and there is a legal standard to adhere to when we're talking about issues concerning immigration. Actually, today what side proposition has portrayed you is a miserable picture of those undocumented illegal immigrants. But we definitely possess sympathy for towards those 11 million people. But ultimately, we believe that there is nothing wrong for those foreigners who possess splendid American dreams to come to the States to pursue for a better living. But there is everything wrong for them to pursue their American dreams in an illegal way by breaking laws of immigration. So actually, we believe that amnesty today we're talking about is too reckless a movement to take. Why is that? Because actually, when we're having this debate on whether or not to grant amnesty to those illegal immigrants, there are certain stakeholders to be considered. The first one is those illegal immigrants themselves. The second one is those legal immigrants and those Native Americans. And third is American as a nation. So whether or not to pass this motion is to consider why these three groups of people are going to be better off or worse off after this motion. We believe that actually they are going to be worse off if we pass this motion about amnesty. Why is that? So firstly, there are two rebuttals against the proposition side. First rebuttal is that actually they've been continuously telling us that it's so hard already for those illegal immigrants to obtain a passport or American citizenship, like for those Chinese or Japanese and Indian people, they have to wait extremely long time before they can even start the application process. But actually, we believe that the current situation is already getting to the better direction because there are already various channels and access for foreigners to obtain and the green cards and further American visas in a legal way. We have F1 visa for international students definitely, and for their parents, spouses, or offspring, they can apply for a F2 visa and come with the students in a same way. So we're not going to tear the families apart by having all kinds of visas, providing for them channels to come to the States in a family or reunion way. Like we have also the working visas and business visas for all different groups of people. They can all apply for their visas and come to the States to pursue their dreams. And furthermore, in October last year, the U.S. Senate has passed a law that's saying that every engineering major student, after they get a master's degree, or every major student after they get PhD degree, they are going to automatically obtain a green card so that they can begin an easier life in the American States. So actually, this all shows a more and more tolerant and inclusive attitude by the United States for those immigrants. We actually believe that the system itself, the immigration system and the immigration laws is actually upgrading itself, and to open the doors for the immigrants, for them to come to the States in a legal way. So actually, we are not depriving those people of rights to come to the States to pursue their dreams. And secondly, we want to further clarify the fundamental difference between our Dream Act policy and their amnesty. Actually, for those amnesty, is going to grant them citizenship in a more direct way. But however, by our policy as a Dream Act, we're actually doing a 2-year surveillance and supervision to check those people to make qualification. It's like a qualification test. If they can pass those 2 years qualification, they are actually granted a chance to prove themselves, to prove their values, to prove their determination to come to the States. Yes.
Okay, both your plan and our plan allow for security checks, for background checks, for people to be verified if they're safe. For that reason, why should we not stick with amnesty? Because both of them have the exact same benefits.
Actually, what amnesty is going to convey is to an idea that those immigrants can all suddenly get citizenship in a very immediate way. But however, our Dream Act and other programs like working visas, what we are going to do is to provide them with an opportunity to prove themselves, and within their effort and all the effort and endeavors, they can try to make themselves and obtain themselves a citizenship. So I believe this is going to be the underlying difference between our policy and theirs. And moving on to my construction part, we believe that actually the reality is that American visa is the hardest to apply in the world. But still, there are hundreds of millions of people who are eager and desperate for application. Why is that? I mean, ultimately, American passport is only a black small book. But actually, associated with such an American passport, it is going to be the rights and freedom that make people sacrifice everything they have to come to the States to pursue their American dreams. So I believe that actually American as a nation has its initiative and intention to make some selections. And first, there are 2 reasons for all those scrutiny and checking system behind this legal immigration system. Firstly, for the security reasons, there need to be some background checks to eliminate those potential dangerous people. That is also the protection of the Native American people. And secondly, for the state benefit reasons, they have to distinguish from those immigrants and to choose those really productive and those really have their chances to come to the States to make better contributions to the States. So actually, we believe that nations have ultimately their natural interest to defense. Even though it sounds a little bit like utilitarianism, but actually nations are not welfare machines, so they cannot provide eternal benefits and convenience to all people without any distinguishment and calculus. So actually, we believe that America as a nation has a right to go through all the scrutiny system and background system and the security check system to really select those people who can be contributors to the States and who can be living in a peaceful way with Native American people. So actually, and secondly, we also believe that for those immigrants who have managed to come to the States in a legal way, if we're going to provide those amnesty to those illegal immigrants, it will be unfair for those legal immigrants who have struggled their way to the States in a legal procedure, and they may sacrifice more time, more finance, and more other things to come to the States in a legal way. So actually, we believe it's better for the United States to not give amnesty to people and to those illegal immigrants, so that the States can be better and those American native people and illegal immigrants can also be better in such a mechanism. Thank you.
there are 11.7 million people who are here who deserve a right to become an American citizen, that we are very proud to propose this plan. And ultimately, we believe the government plan does do a better job in solving for all the harms that we hear on the opposition side. So before I get into that, I have 2 points of presentation and then 2 clarifying questions. The first question being, why does this plan, offering a plan of amnesty and a path to citizenship, solve better than what the opposition likes to tell you, which is the DREAM Act? The second question is, how do we challenge the stigma against immigrants? And I'll be talking a lot about Kelvin's speech and how I think that this idea of a stigma won't be solved unless we use a plan of blanket amnesty like the government side wants you to believe. So let's get into my 2 points of refutation. So first, the entire opposition rhetoric is based on this idea that people need to earn their citizenship, that they need to work for their ability to live in this country. Okay, so we'd like to respond to that in 2 ways, really. First, we think that when a family who has been living here for 10 years, who has been paying consistently into Social Security, who has been paying taxes in those abilities, what more do they have to do in order to earn their citizenship? We think in those situations, those families have a right to be able to become American citizens, and because that is essentially what they are, minus the protection that they don't have under the government. We think that that's a really important distinction. Secondly, she gets up and talks to you about how we need to be really, really particular about the people we let into our country, and that ultimately it's under the states, it's in the state's benefit to do this. Okay, so here's the thing. When there are 11.7 million people who don't have the protection of the state, we think that that number is large enough that they should be guaranteed some type of right under the government. When they've been living here for long enough, when they understand our culture, when they actually create an economic benefit for our country, we think that it's really, really important that we allow them to have a legal standing in our country. Okay, let's talk about my 2 points. First, why does this plan of offering a plan of amnesty and a path to citizenship solve better than the opposition side? So I get up and talk to you about the DREAM Act, which, as Calvin was able to point out, is essentially the same as our plan, minus a few big distinctions. We think that on our side we agree that we shouldn't deport people, and if they agree that we shouldn't deport people, then they shouldn't be using the DREAM Act. Because as Calvin brought to you, his analysis was talking about this idea that people often don't fill out the right paperwork, or they don't go to the right office because they're afraid of what the government can do to them. We think for those reasons you are inherently going to have people you're going to have to deport. And we don't think that the government should be wanting to, 1, spend its money on deporting these people, and 2, that it's even ethical or moral in those ways. So we think for those reasons it's really important that we look to our plan instead of the DREAM Act. Go ahead, Marlene.
So if you grant amnesty to all these people and allow future immigrants to be increased to the point where the country may not be able to hold them, how can you actually say that that's actually going to be okay when every other country has these checks, every other country has these balances, every other country has these obstacles for a reason?
Come on, Marlene. We're offering a blanket amnesty one time. We're not continuously allowing people to go into this country. We're not declaring open borders. We think that this plan is right within our means. We think that ultimately we're saying that these people who have lived here for long enough should have the ability to have a government that is willing to protect them. Okay, so secondly, to talk about how this ultimately encourages more people. All right, we have a couple of responses to this. One, the United States is already beefing up border control, so we're already seeing that those numbers are decreasing pretty quickly. We think that that's not going to happen. We think offering a blanket amnesty is going to mean that the people in the country are going to stay in the country and more people are not going to come in because we're already solving for that in our current economic status. But secondly, we think that when people are being exploited, when people are being offered money, little to nothing in pay, when they're working long hours, we think it's totally okay for us to offer them blanket amnesty. We think that when you say that more people are going to come in, and so those 11.7 million people who are being exploited is okay, we disagree with that calculus, and we think it's very, very important that we uphold human life. Secondly, we talked about how this is detrimental to the U.S. economy, and that using their plan will somehow be better for them. Okay, so if we offer amnesty to 11.7 million people, and 25% of small businesses between 2005 and 2011 were created by illegal immigrants. We think that shows it's going to benefit our economy if we offer this amnesty to these people. For those reasons, we're very happy to have a plan like this. Also, we talked about blurring morality. Morality is already blurred when people are being exploited anyway, so we think that it happens in the status quo. We don't think this is going to make it any worse. All right, let's talk about Calvin's analysis, because I think that this is what ends up winning us the round. He talks a lot about how the stigma that we get in society right now is made worse when we continue to perpetuate this idea that there are illegal immigrants. As soon as we grant amnesty in this way, we ultimately say that these group of people have a legal status under the government, which means we are fine with the fact that racism might increase, because now these people have a way to go to their government, to go to the police, to get legal protection protection under the law. We think it's really important that these people are allowed to have this protection, because ultimately we're going to see the stigma end. So we think for those reasons we actually help solve for this idea of a stigma. Secondly, we think that when this idea of exploitation happens, as soon as you grant them amnesty, a couple of things happen. One, they can now go to the police. They're allowed to report their employer because their employer is exploiting them. Also, we think they can now go to the employer and demand to have better working conditions. We think in those ways it gives these people a right and an ability to interact in our legal system in a way that they've been paying into for 10 years. We think that that's fair for them to be able to do it. Under their plan, we actually see discrimination get worse. One, you see more deportations, so we think that that's really negative. And two, we think integration through this law is the most important way that we can actually help solve this. So what have I told you today? Basically, we've been able to explain to you why we believe our plan does a better job at solving this idea of illegal immigration. We think that when you offer a plan like the DREAM Act, when you do something that says that you are required to have 2 years and you have to go to a certain building to fill out certain paperwork, you end up getting more people who are being deported. You end up having more people be exploited in the long run. And we think that we ultimately are able to challenge the stigma of the undocumented worker, and we're able to say that you have worked hard in this country and you have the ability and the right to earn legal status in our country. And for those reasons, we believe that this plan is going to actually help solve for a lot of the problems with exploitation, for a lot of problems with discrimination, and for all of the problems in terms of giving people fairness under the law. And for those reasons, we are very proud to propose.
What we see is inherently on side government when they're going to circumvent that system and say, you know what, if you broke the law, you're not going to get punished for it, there's going to be no accountability for your actions. We are just going to say that it's okay to break the law, and in the future create that precedence that if you make the problem big enough, the government will simply just swipe it away. We don't want to uphold that kind of view. And what we do on our side is we say, you know what, yes, something's been broken, and maybe it's not the best way to get here, but we're going to do something about it. I'm going to get into that in my 2 main points of clarification, which is what upholds the law and what reduces racism and future issues. I think that both sides of these questions, the answer falls on our side of the house, and we solve for them best. But first, I want to give you some brief refutation from some stuff that Addie brought you. She talks about how they're going to be beefing up control, but also letting in more people, and how they're going to be strengthening the borders, but letting in more people so that there's not this problem of illegal immigrants coming in. But we think it's you're saying that you have both sides in your house. If the PM talks to you, he says, well, more people want to come, we're going to let more people in. And she says, but no, we're actually going to keep them out too. We think that's kind of all right, you're kind of combating your own team there. Cool. And what we actually see is we think that whether or not you're going to increase the amount of quotas, there's still going to be people who are not going to meet that quota, who are going to be excluded by that quota, because there will always be more people who want to come in than we can allow in if they're going to cap it. And therefore, you're going to have the same problem of illegal immigrants. And a one-time amnesty is not going to solve anything for that. In fact, it sets the precedence that it's not just that one-time amnesty thing that Abby's saying. It's oh, that one-time amnesty thing? Oh yeah, and it happened in 1986? And oh yeah, maybe it'll happen again in 2025. I'm going to be there for that one. You know what I mean? You're setting a precedence that this is not a one-time thing. It's will be the second time we're granting amnesty. And it didn't work the first time. Why do you think it's going to work the second time? Especially when you're going to go and actually increase the problems caused by the 1986 failure of amnesty. It didn't end illegal immigration. It actually made it worse. We had 5 million immigrants then, and now we have 11 million now. Clearly, amnesty is not the best way to solve this. So you're blurring the morality, which is brought to you by side opposition. And Abby says after we have this amnesty happen, they're going to be able to go to the police. They're going to be able to go to the government. We think that's great. We also think that's not mutually exclusive. So my first point: what upholds the law? We recognize that the law has been broken, and we're not saying that's okay. We're saying, you know what? You guys did something bad. But what we're not going to do is we recognize that situations you come from may be bad. We recognize that there are reasons that you may be here that are legitimate. We think that you've broken the law, but we're giving you a chance for redemption. We're not just going to pardon you. You need to work for it. Because it is true, if a law has been broken, it's not okay to just pardon something. There are accountability that needs to happen. There are consequences for your actions, but we're not draconian. We are going to actually give you a chance to redeem yourself. We see on side opposition, we say, hey, you know what you need? We need more checks. We need more redemptive chances. But we also need to recognize that it's not okay to break the law and set a precedence that if you break the law, it will just be okay, fine and dandy if you make the problem big enough. We don't want those blurred lines of morality. Calvin.
How can you say that nations have to uphold immigration laws as they stand when your version of the DREAM Act is a complete circumvention of current immigration law. It's exactly what you don't want to see happen in your side of the house.
What we're doing is we're setting precedents that illegal immigrants, it's not okay to come in illegally, but we are saying that there are 11 million people here and we cannot just deport them all because there is like all these sides here. What we do offer is we offer a suggestion for the 11 million people here while setting the stance that it's not okay to come into our country illegally. It's a one-time thing. We're not going to say it's okay in the future. We're strengthening our borders. We're not just opening them up and increasing immigration caps. What we're saying is it's not okay, but it is a problem that we need to deal with, and this is how we're going to deal with it while we can hopefully fix it instead of making the problem much worse and more likely for illegal immigration to happen in the future. So, the morality issue needs to be solved. Like, yeah, morality does need to be solved. We do think it's like horrible there under these abuses, but why can't we crack down on the fact that people are hiring illegal immigrants? Why can't we crack down on the business owners? Like, I think that saying, hey, you know what, we're going to just give all of these workers amnesty is not going to solve those issues. It's not going to solve those problems. If anything, it's going to cause people to lose their jobs. And we think that what we do is we give them a venue to legal citizenship to where they can work for it. So what reduces racism in future issues? Not blanket grouping of people together who already have a stereotype. Like if you have one group that is extremely stereotyped and you suddenly group them with a group that's legal, those legal people who spent their time, went through a legal venue, are suddenly all mixed in together, and if you say profiling happens now, it's gonna get a whole lot worse. When people have no idea where people came from, people are already gonna be prejudiced and racist, and we think that's actually gonna increase. And you guys say you're okay with that? We're not. What we're saying is people who actually go through our plan on our side of the house, you've worked out of it, and they say that, you know what, you're not just okay with accepting that this blanket parking. They've actually worked for it, and they said, you know what, we recognize what we did is illegal, but we're working because we want to be American citizens, and we want to uphold your laws, and we want to uphold your values. Because we're not okay with them saying that the law does not need to be upheld. It's very important. So future issues, I already talked about how the 1986 amnesty actually increased illegal immigration. It actually increased the problems we see, which is why we're discussing amnesty a second time today, because it's gotten so bad that we have 11 million people living illegally within our borders. And what we see is with that pattern, you don't want to repeat a failed policy. We're saying it failed this time, but it won't fail this time because we'll also increase immigration caps. No one else is going to come in illegally if we do that because we'll be able to accept everybody. So either it's open borders or it's shutting them off. It can't be both, which they bring you. And what we see here is on our side of the house, we offer suggestions for the 11 million already here. We offer a way for the law to actually be upheld, and we offer them to actually say, hey, you know what? Yes, potentially you are facing deportation, and maybe that does suck if you don't uphold the law, but you need to actually follow our laws. We're giving you a chance to redeem yourself, but you will be held accountable for your actions, regardless, if you do not. So what we see here is amnesty causes way more problems than it solves. We see that there are actually issues on their side where they actually make things worse. 1986 has its detriments for a reason, which we think really was brought out to you on our side. And we see that we actually don't solve anything when you just blanket cover everything and don't address the fact that laws need to be upheld. That don't address the fact that laws are important and they're there for a reason, and there are things that you need to be held accountable for. We do on our side. And you know what? What upholds the law? We do. What reduces racism? We do. And what's better for the future? We are. For no other reason, you can have to vote side opposition. Thank you.